knowing anything. The second thing in that was we had each other's help. And we always tell people when we're doing this work to not do this stuff by yourself. Find people that you can do it with. Because there are days like farm stuff, homestead stuff that just suck. And if there are other people there that can share the suck with you, it's not nearly as terrible. So that's kind of how we got started. We decided to butcher a couple pigs. We did it, and it was a mess. We got better at it. We did it the next year. We brought other friends in to do it with us. We got better and better. And we realized that more and more people needed this information, so we started teaching these classes around the country.
I can interject.
Yeah.
He's not kidding. We had no idea what we were doing. And we decided that to do this right or to do it well, we should learn from someone who knew how to do it. But in 2010, this sounds extreme, and it's definitely dating us. But you could not go to the internet and find out how to butcher an animal. You couldn't go to YouTube and find out how to butcher an animal. And if you wanted to value add any of those products, all the books about like charcuterie and refined meat products, they have all been published since then, like since 2018 to the present. So it's a burgeoning movement now, but it didn't exist then. And so I had, you guys ever heard of Carla Emery's Encyclopedia of Country Living? It's like a really thick book. It's been published like 37 times over the years. That was my only resource, and it had nothing. But very generic, how to break down. Certainly not how to kill it well. Definitely not how to scald it and scrape it. And so we went to a neighbor of ours, an Amish neighbor, and asked him, Sam, if we could join him for a hog killing. And he obliged. Only, true to character, it was half done by the time we got there at like 7 a.m. So we both took the day off work and went over to Sam's. We were there bright and early, and the pig's already dead, hanging in the barn, and he was in the process of skinning it. And consequently, we went home and skinned our first hog as well, because that's what we learned at Sam's. Again, that was a disaster, and one that we would not repeat, as it turns out, because we learned later that you don't have to you don't have to skin the hog. You can scald and scrape it and then keep all of that good skin. But how do you do that? We didn't know, and again, we couldn't learn. So it was several years of trial and error. And all of that trial and error was with an end game in mind, to have as much quality food from this pig that I raised as possible. How many people here actually raise pigs presently? Okay, not many. How about livestock? How many people here raise livestock? Okay. So when you buy that feed and that animal consumes that feed, not all of that feed is going to the bacon or the chicken breasts. It's going to the feathers or the tail or the ribs, whatever it is. The whole animal is consuming that feed. If you can learn how to capitalize on all of that yield instead of just the premium cuts that we are familiar with in the butcher case, then you can diversify your meal plan and get all the value back from the animal. When Sam taught us how to skin a hog, it was a little disheartening for us, but it still encouraged us to move forward the process. Look, Sam doesn't even know what he's doing, and he's doing it, so let's try it ourselves. When we started scalding and scraping, and I'm just going to mention this anecdotally, when I say scalding and scraping, I mean just like a chicken getting dunked into hot water and then you pluck all the feathers off, you can do essentially the same thing with a hog. It doesn't have a hide like goats or deer or beef have. It has skin. And if you scald that skin, you can get all of the hair and all of the epidermal layer off, and then all of that skin can either be turned into food like pork rinds or used as a preservative for things like prosciutto legs. So anyway, to get that done well, you need to dunk it into hot water. So we tried that over what we thought was super romantic live fire, right? We didn't have to use propane. We tried it with a bathtub once early on. As it turns out, it's really hard to regulate the temperature of water over a live fire, number one. And guess what happens when you dunk a hog into a barrel of water? So now you're standing there with smoke in your face and smoldering embers under a barrel, and you have no way to get that fire going again. Anyway, we have workshops now that basically short circuit all the mistakes that you would be making. So we are experts on how to do everything wrong because it took us years and years and years to figure out how to do it right. All that to say, we wanted to learn how to do it, so we went to Sam, and then I naively made an arrangement with a fellow that promised us. He was a chef in Columbus, a couple hours away from us. And he promised us to teach us the refined art of butchering and curing in exchange for me raising him a hog. I was like, oh, that sounds like a decent deal. Someone's going to come to my homestead and walk us through this whole process and show us how to do it all right the first time. Turns out he was what you would call a bullshit artist, and he basically made everything up. He didn't know what he was doing. And we didn't know that he didn't know what he was doing, by the way, but we videotaped the whole thing. And we watched it later and realized, man, what a hack. But the point is, even that was one more step in us having the confidence to just keep moving forward. So getting started is the most important thing. Learn from people, and then do it with other people that like it. And then you'll have enough confidence to build on your practices. So when we have the workshops that we do, we tell people, listen, if you do this at home and you raise, say, 3 hogs for your family, and 3 hogs, by the way, is quite a bit of meat to put away for your family for a year. If you do it at home and you want to process those on site at your homestead, pick a weekend, get everybody together that you want to be there. Have all the supplies you think you're going to need. Everybody shows up that morning and everybody's ready. You've got music playing, you've got coffee brewed. We happen to have a bottle of bourbon because it's a ritual, or 3 of them, yes. There were 3 bottles. We were only responsible for 1 of them. But have all these people ready, right, to join in and help and make this, if not a party, make it something festive that people can enjoy. If they don't enjoy it, they're not going to come back. So if you have good food prepared, namely, like for us, it's hock and bean soup. Whenever we're done putting the hog away and it's hanging, we go inside and the meal is already ready. And you don't have to use your hands to eat it, which is handy. So everybody gets together, right? And they do this 1 hog on 1 weekend. Well, you're going to do things wrong, and you're going to have things that you wish you had there that you didn't. So you make a list of all the things you're going to do better or different next time, and then the next time, all those same people come together, and you could do both hogs and put both hogs away that next weekend, whatever that weekend is. So that's how you start to grow in knowledge and skill and build your inventory of the things that you're going to need.
Yeah, so one of the thing that's taken us 10 years to build is kind of our like perfect butcher shop, which kind of goes into Doug's list about acquiring all these materials. Sometimes people come to a workshop at our farm and they'll see all these things that we have. And I mean, it's just human nature. People they look at all the stuff we have and they just want to get all of those things, and they want to build a butcher shop and have the walk-in cooler and all of the stuff. And we always make sure to tell people, you don't need all this stuff. Some of these things are just here for convenience. I mean, we've butchered pigs in the woods on the side of a hill before. You don't need all of the stuff, excuse me, all of that stuff. But just know you can acquire that time, and you can also share a lot of that load with people around you. We constantly tell people that if we hadn't started doing this together, we wouldn't still be doing it, because when you have other people around you doing hard work, it makes the work, it still might be hard, but it's a lot more bearable when other people are doing it with you. So if you can find a group of people and put a butcher shop or a processing area together that you can communally use, you can offset most of that cost, and then you're always going to have people around that are willing to help you, and you get to learn together, which is the big thing that Doug and I have done. We got into this, we originally started making a lot of beer together. And through that, we realized, oh, if he takes care of this thing, I can take care of the other thing. And we started building our knowledge together. And I don't want to say it was competitive, because it wasn't really. It was more communal, but we were trying to make each other better as we went through. And the more we do all of this stuff, we realize I realized that he's got strengths that I don't have, and hopefully he's realized that I have some that he doesn't have. I haven't asked him about that, but it's possible. It's possible that I have some. When people are starting, they're like, well, I don't have anyone around me that wants to do any of this stuff, or I don't think they're interested. You can find people that will at least keep you company. If you have something good to eat and something there to drink, they'll stand there and talk to you while you work. That you can get with your own efforts is beyond what you're going to get at just about any restaurant. You can spend the time, and it's actually not that much more time, and you can have like world-class 3-star Michelin types of meals in your own home with just a little bit of give a shitness, as we like to call it. Yeah.
And when you get started, especially if you start processing animals on farm or on the homestead, you're going to get started, and it's going to be a seemingly overwhelming task. And you want to make sure early on, especially, you don't want to waste anything, right? And you got this frame of mind like, well, I paid all this money, I took all this time, especially with a pig. You're looking at about $200 to $300 in feed after the acquisition cost, and probably 5 to 7 months of raising it. And that's for a traditional heritage breed pig. If you have a lard pig, like a Kune Kune or an IPP even, or an American guinea hog, they might take you 18 months. So you've got a lot of investment in this thing, and you don't want to waste anything. So usually that means you go straight for the premium cuts, and everything else kind of falls off the back end. And that might, when I say everything else, I mean like the organs, for example. You're probably not going to be cleaning casings from the first hogs that you do. You may not be rendering lard from the first hogs that you do. You're certainly not going to be dehydrating pork rinds. However, all of those things are incremental steps as you move through this process. You focus and you zero in on how do I put away the most important things first, and then as you build the knowledge and the skill and the infrastructure, you grow and expand your culinary horizons. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be raising every one of these years, you're going to put hogs away, for example, and every single time you're faced with an entire hog, all of it. And yes, you can throw it away, you can skin it, you can take the head off, you can take the legs off, put all of it in the compost pile. We would judge you. But we also understand, we get it. It's an overwhelming and intimidating proposition. When you're faced with the entire animal, which you will be if you raised it, and you're asking yourself, how do I not waste this? How do I bring value to this? How do I make this delicious? Well, first of all, does your family or your tradition have a history of what to do with spleen? Probably not. Probably not blood either. But someone's tradition does. So one of the things that Andy and I actually are able to celebrate is we don't have that heritage. If we did, we would be locked into doing it the way Granddad did. Well, we didn't have that tradition per se. And so we borrow from all of the others. we are, in fact, children of the information age. As it turns out, I can find out with just a few seconds what the French do with this part and what the Italians do with this part, what the Portuguese or the Spanish do with this. And in no time, you can put together an entire, like, the whole hall can be dedicated to different culinary uses and traditions, none of which I grew up with, and most of which are amazing. So when we do our workshops now, we're actually very equal opportunity. We feel like the Italians really nail like whole muscle curing, right? But they don't own salami. So too do the French or the Spanish, for example. And we borrow from all of these different traditions, and we try our very best to make every single part of that animal delicious, which seems obvious because that's what we do professionally, but it took us a lot of years to get there.
Yeah, and that road was filled with a whole bunch of terrible food, to be perfectly honest. There were times we tried cooking spleen because we just couldn't deal with the fact that we were wasting a lot of this product that was from a pig that we had just killed. So there were plenty of failures, but as we kept going, it was, I don't know, it's just a fun experience to think about because we were making all sorts of stupid things. And we would find parts of a recipe here that made a little bit of sense, and we try to combine it with something else, and it was just a mess. But the fun thing about it was we were always curious, and we knew that historically people were eating the whole pig. And this goes for a lot of other animals too. We focus on pigs, but you can take it to a lot of other realms. But we knew people did it, and we knew people did it in a time where they didn't have all the resources we have now. So we knew we would be able to make prosciutto and all these other fancy European meats. We knew we could make them. It was just a matter of getting the information and putting it into practice. We joke a lot. I'm a big sort of research kind of weirdo. So when I get into like a pork thing, I go to Google Translate all the time, and I'll just type in, pig butchering, and then translate it to like Vietnamese or Korean or something, and just look up videos on YouTube to see how they deal with things. And it's kind of weird, but it gives us a good sense of like all the different possibilities. And because we're naturally curious, we just keep on sort of pushing the envelope and seeing what we can do. And we're just talking about one animal. This can be expounded on like every other type of even vegetable and things like that. I wanted to tell this story about Bob. He's not here right now. He's over there. But Bob came to one of our workshops about this time last year, and he's the reason we're here. So if you don't like this, you can take it up with him. But he was really fascinated by the workshop because through the whole time, we treated everything like almost like we were in a kitchen. Like, this is all food. Like, from the time we shoot it, all we're thinking about is food. That's the whole reason that pig was raised. And he was really interested and taken aback by that, which Doug and I think is really interesting because that's the whole reason those pigs are here. Pigs are really fascinating because they're one of the only animals, farm animals, that is raised specifically, singularly for meat. Chickens and cows, and they all have other secondary uses, but pigs are just there for meat. But Bob was really interested in the fact that they want to make all this good. We're not just grinding everything up, which you can do. But the reason this talk is called the Tea and Tasty is because Bob was just so interested in the fact that everything that we dealt with was a matter of how are we going to eat this? How can we make it the best thing we can possibly make? And we've had that sentiment from a lot of people when they come to our workshops. Doug and I love feeding the people that come to these things, especially at our own farm. We have, like Doug was talking about the hock and bean, we have a whole menu every day. You're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with good food and drink the entire time. And people at the end of the workshops, they'll always say, like, I just thought we were going to eat cold cuts the whole time, which to Doug and I is kind of insulting. The whole reason we do all of this is to have world-class food and teach people that having world-class food where you live in your kitchen is possible.
Yeah, and it's not just possible. Like, why are you doing it? Why are you raising these animals in the first place? Everyone already knows you can go get protein somewhere. You already know that. You already know that. You can go get a chicken or a half of a pig even. You don't even have to raise it. But if you go to the trouble of raising it yourself, why would you not try to value add as much of it as possible? It was actually very early on in our workshop model. This would have been like 2017. We were in New Hampshire at a workshop, and there were 8 people around the table, and there's a hog there. And I said, before we get started with breakdown, I'm going to talk about anatomy and different parts of the animal and why they all lend themselves to different types of cookery. How many people here raise pigs? And nobody raised their hands. And I said, oh, that's okay. That was new for us. Usually we get people that have like pigs on the ground and they want to figure out what to do with them. So then I said, all right, how many of you are going to raise pigs or plan on it? And no one raised their hands. And that was like a really eye-opening experience for us. And then we took a really hard pivot with our business model after that workshop, because we realized we were limiting ourselves by trying to speak to the 1% of people that actually raise pigs or livestock. But everybody eats well, right? Everybody wants to eat and everybody appreciates good food. And so we had already been moving down the road of like cured meats and value adding things like organs. But that wasn't what our workshops are about. Now they are, because we realize the door is open to everyone. If you care about good food, this is an excellent culinary experience. And that's only born out of the fact that it's up to us. Like, that's how we grew our business, is what he was doing, what I was doing on a personal level. We just got really good at it. And that's another aside. But a lot of folks getting into homesteading or small scale farming immediately ask the question like, okay, how do I justify all these costs? How can I turn a profit or at least make money so that I can mitigate some of my losses of all these inputs? And so it's very easy to go down the road of like calculating, well, how many chickens would I have to raise to make X, or how many hogs would I have to raise to offset my costs? And if you start thinking like a business out of the gate, then your homestead is going to be a job. And you don't want it to be a job. You want it to be a lifestyle, and a rewarding one at that. So instead, I encourage people, do as many things as you feel like you want to do and that you find some amount of satisfaction in. Some of those things will rise to the surface like the cream, and you'll realize, I really love this thing and I'm actually getting pretty good at it. If that happens and it grows into a business, then you're stuck doing something you really like and that you're really good at. That is not a problem. But starting to raise and scale up livestock production because it makes really good sense on the P&L sheet, that is not something we encourage people to do.
No, not at all. In fact, a little bit of the backstory that I didn't talk about was when we moved to the farm together, we started trying to do everything that we ever wanted to do all at once. And we found out rather quickly that was impossible, and that we were basically half-assing everything we were doing, which for the most part was enough, but it was draining, and we weren't making any money like we wanted to, and we weren't doing all the things that we wanted to do in the way that we wanted to do them. And in 2019, we completely, we shouldn't say completely, but we downsized what our farm does and focused on what Doug and I wanted to do at the farm. And it also happens that it was what other people wanted from us, was more of our education, traveling to other farms and showing them these skills that, for better or worse, just aren't around anymore. When my grandparents were alive, my grandma would always tell us stories. Their neighbors would come over, they'd have 4 or 5 pigs. The neighbors and them would butcher all 4 or 5 pigs in one day. And then the next Saturday, they'd go to the other person's farm and do the same thing. And the Saturday after that, they'd go to their other friend's farm. And that, in a lot of, this is not necessarily a judgment, but a lot of times when people think of self-reliance, they think singularly. And that's not going to work. You have to have other people helping you. And you have to be able to rely on other people. So when we do our workshops, I always try to tell the model that my grandparents had, their neighbors close by. They were helping each other when they needed help. Because the work that needed done in a singular day, my grandparents couldn't have done by themselves. Mm-hmm. But they could do it if 3 other families came over, and it was actually joyful, mm-hmm. and everyone was happy, and the kids were playing, and the adults were working, and they got a bunch of things done together. And the next weekend they did it again, and they shared lives together. And so a lot of the times at our workshops, what we try to get people to understand is, yeah, you could butcher this pig by yourself, and it's 30 degrees outside, and you're there all day, and by the end of the day, you haven't done all the other stuff you want to do, and you just hate it. And then that's not a good way to want to do it again. So find people to be there with you. And again, it doesn't matter. It could be someone just playing guitar that likes playing guitar that's standing by you while you're working, which would be actually pretty awesome. We tell them to get the food and drink they want. Get people there, however you can get them there, and they can start learning with you. And then suddenly the work gets done faster, gets done better, and you're all having a great time. So if you listen to anything else, forget everything else we say, just get people there helping you. If it's pig butchering, that's great. And if you want to come to a workshop, that would be cool too. But get people there to help you, no matter what it is you're doing. If it's any sort of big job, in that case, I'm going to say don't be self-reliant. Mm-hmm. Be reliant on your friends and neighbors and community as much as you can.
It's actually it's a good metaphor on a micro and macro scale. Because farming at large, and I don't actually consider myself a farmer. I do raise pigs, and I have for 15 years. But I don't raise them on a scale that I would consider farming. Just the same, farming as it is, it's so much more fractured and independent than it used to be. It used to look like Andy just mentioned, where the neighboring farms would even pool their resources together, not just their time and energy. Like one guy in the area had the combine, and he would go around and combine, and another guy had the haying equipment, and he would go around and do the haying. Because the idea of being wholly independent was not a reality. It was not possible. And the pig butcher is like the one thing that was always communal. Everybody would always get together and do that thing together. And today you can have really, really expensive machinery, all GPS tracked, and you don't need anybody to do anything. You're just in that big old piece of machinery, getting your farming done. But when it comes time to putting hogs away, it's like the one time where it makes really good sense to reach out to your neighbors. So we really appreciate that element of what we do. And again, it's one of those things where because we've done it long enough now, we've gotten pretty good at it. We're supposed to be talking about food and like the culinary element to butchery. But that's a really difficult thing to do kind of unilaterally, just talking at you about cookery and things. And we have now 15 minutes left in our slot. So I don't think it'd be a bad idea to open it up to Q&A. If you guys have any questions.
Okay, so let's talk about how Q&A works.
Yeah.
There's a microphone in the middle of the room, and if you'd like to ask a question, because we are joined by 100 digital pass holders, not all of whom are online right now.
Sure.
Please walk up to the mic, and then we can hear you on the digital side too. If I get any digital pass holders, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. If you could write the word question in all caps first, that'll help these old lady eyes know that you want me to interject a question. We'll alternate, and it looks like our first question is there. Jake, go for it.
So how do you cook a spleen?
That's a good question. So we've tried a bunch of different ones. We found a recipe in an old cookbook from France, I think, for something called rolled spleen, where spleen is like a tongue-shaped organ. It's pretty flat. You're supposed to like layer it with bacon and roll it up and poach it in stock, and it was awful. So we made that one time.
Not just offal.
Yeah. What we normally do now, to be perfectly honest, is we cook the spleen with the kidneys and some heart, a little bit of the hanger steak, some liver. And we have everyone at the workshop. I mean, we don't always do this, but we usually have them dice it up really small, all of it. Because we're trying to do a little bit of a mind game, because some people, when they know they're eating spleen, their brain gets in the way of what they're doing, and it's really hard for them to deal with that. So if we dice everything up the same size,
And we throw some pork in there to confuse
a
them.
little bit of pork in there, we actually we sear it and make like a pan sauce, and then we serve that over schnitzel. So, and usually there's mushrooms in it. It's like a cream sauce. It's kind of like a Jaeger schnitzel. But with the mushrooms and the pork and the cream sauce over the schnitzel, if you fed it to someone and they didn't know spleen was in it, they wouldn't tell you spleen is in it. And it's not that we're necessarily trying to like sneak something in on someone. We're showing people that you can eat it and it can be good.
Yeah.
And the internal organs are actually really, really good for you to consume. So there's also a health aspect to it as well. Say that again?
Dice all that up, throw it in the ham hocks and beans.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be the same way. In the class we did here, there was a couple from Cincinnati. In Cincinnati, they make a dish called geta, which I'm not. Yeah, geta. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but sometimes some people, we don't, but some people put the organ meat in that dish too.
So about the organs, I'm going to talk about that for just one more moment before we move on to the next question. We used to, when we got started, put the organs to the very ends because we wanted to focus on the things that mattered the most, like the loins and the bellies and the hams and sausage. And guess what happens when you leave organs in a bowl in the fridge? They're going to stay there, you know. And
Chicken feed.
You're never going to get back to them. And if you freeze them and label it, you're never, ever going to pull out the kidneys or the spleen and be like, oh, we need to thaw this. It's time to use this. It's not going to happen. It's going to live in your freezer forever. So we stopped doing that, and we actually focus on the organ stuff the very day that the pig is killed.
That in the blood.
So we will take all of those organs, as Andy mentioned, and we'll dice all of it up and cook it exactly as he said. And if there's leftovers, instead of it going into a soup, it's actually really decent in an omelet or a pot pie. So you can use all the organs, eat it the day of, and any leftovers can be repurposed in those two ways, which is pretty decent.
Okay, so a question that we have is, what do you do with the blood?
So we've, because we've experimented with a lot of different things, I'll tell you a few of the ones we do. The one we do the most is we make something called morcilla, which is a Spanish-style blood sausage. So it's equal amounts of blood from the pig from when you stick it after it's shot. We mix it with an equal amount of onions and rice, and then there's some spices in there. And mix that all up, stuff it into casings and poach it. And cool fact, blood has the main protein in blood is albumin, which is the same protein in egg whites. So you can treat blood like you do egg whites. And so when you cook blood, it sets up, it solidifies. So the sausage, when you poach it, solidifies, and then we slice it the next day and fry it, like a lot of Spanish do. But we've also made, in Italy, they have a tradition of something called sanguinaccio dolce, which is a sweet chocolate pudding made with blood. So it tastes like a dark chocolate pudding, which is actually quite nice.
If you didn't know that blood was in it, you would just assume it was really rich chocolate pudding.
Yeah. We've also made blood pancakes, which are really striking when you put them in the pan. It's this crimson disc, and then you flip it over and it's turned completely black, just like the cast iron you're cooking it in, which is kind of cool. But again, like the organs, blood is really high in iron. It actually is very good for you. So we try to consume it, and the pig comes with it. So just in like the whole style of things we do, we try to use everything and we try to make it taste great.
Sure.
Could you talk briefly about what kind of infrastructure is required for processing a hog? Because I don't want to overflow a barrel of water.
Oh, yeah, good one. So overflowing the barrel of water is usually two factors, the size of the hog and the amount of water in the barrel. We use, most times, we use a jet burner is what it's called. You guys are probably familiar with like a turkey deep fryer. It's like that, only instead of a range like you'd have with all the little flames, it's got two wide open ports and a way higher PSI regulator. So when that thing is on full tilt, you can't even hear one another.
Like
It's a jet plane sound, and it is designed to bring 55 gallons of water to a boil, for a crab boil. So we'll have a 55-gallon drum on that burner. Pro tip: if you can, start with hot water. If you start with cold water, which we used to do, we'd run like a garden hose across frozen ground in the winter. and then try to, spend hours just waiting for the water to get hot. Instead, we now drain the hot water heater, get the water going. We're starting with 120-degree water instead of 40 or 50-degree water. While we're out there working, the hot water heater's regenerating itself, so it's there when we need it. So we'll bring it up to about 150 degrees to dunk the hog in. What we did 2 days ago with the hog that we dispatched, instead of dunking it, because it was a good-sized hog, we didn't think it was going to fit in the barrel, we laid it on pallets and brought a considerable amount of water to a near boil, to about 190 degrees to 200 degrees. And we simply poured the water over top of the hog with buckets and then scraped it that way. So as far as infrastructure is concerned, that required a way to heat water and a couple pallets. You should be able to do this in the most crude fashion possible, but you'll learn really early on you don't want it to stay crude. You'll want to continue to refine your practice. One really, really important thing is to get the hog as clean as possible. You should be able, if it's properly stuck at the time of the kill, you should be able to bring that hog into your kitchen, butcher it, and not have a bloody mess at all. But you don't want hair in there. Yeah. And that's one thing where you just take your time and your diligence on the morning of the kill to make sure that hog is clean.
Follow up. How are you lifting this hog around? Are you using a tractor, a winch, or what?
Good question. So the question is, how do we lift it? In this case, we actually didn't need to lift it at all. If we wanted to, we could have. I shot it when it was sleeping, or at least laying down, and it was stuck immediately. All the blood was out of it. At that point, we rolled it onto a pallet. We roll it onto a pallet because we hose it off. Pigs are usually covered in some kind of icky. Even if they're really, really well-raised pigs, they still sleep in mud. They prefer it. And so we hose it off, and hosing it off on the ground just makes a giant mess. But if you hose it off on a pallet, the water sheds away, and then you've got a hog on a pallet that you can move. Trying to lift a hog by an ear or a tail or a foot is a mess. Trying to carry a hog on a pallet is like pallbearers. You get a bunch of people around the pallet, you lift, and you move the pallet with the hog on it. Then we scalded and scraped it right there on the pallets. At the time of the hoisting, to eviscerate it, we use the front end loader of a skid steer. At our place, we have just a block and tackle or a chain hoist. And if you didn't do that, you don't have to hoist it either. If you don't have the means of doing that, you would just have to eviscerate it on its back or on its side and basically field dress it. We don't encourage that because it can kind of be a slippery, sloppy mess. But if you have to hoist it, a front end loader or a block and tackle work just fine. Next question.
We've told them everything they need to know.
We are out of questions. Let's give them a round of applause. Guys, I appreciate you making the long trek here and spending so many days with us. I didn't get to see your class, but every time I poked my head in for even 10 minutes, and guys, I've butchered many a hog. I learned something new every time.
Oh, good.
It was super awesome. I'm hoping to take one of your classes when we're not doing it right before Self-Reliance Festival.
Kind of busy.
But let's give them a round of applause. You just hold here for just a second. Just hold here for just a second. And I wanted to mention that at the other end, if you walk through vendor row, go around the corner, there are food vendors there serving breakfast. There's an espresso machine if you want to be bougie. We've got coffee at the Hollow Roast booth also there. We will be back here at 10:30 for a really cool session from Alan Booker about how resilient is your kitchen. And he has meshed permaculture principles and setting up functions in your kitchen to handle the things you're producing in your kitchen. So I'm super excited about that. We'll be there at 10:30. See you soon.
All right. All right, guys, we got a 5-minute warning for Mr. Alan Booker talking about how resilient is your kitchen. So I'm just warning you now, if you want to get over here and hear me plug the sponsors, maybe make a joke or two, and then introduce our speaker, get over here right away. All right. All right, so anybody froze to death yet? Okay, so my favorite go-to line today is I'm Canadian, but it's still cold. So, and if it's that cold for a Canadian, I really feel bad for the folks who are not acclimatized to minus 47 like we had this winter. So anyway, I got a couple of sponsors to thank. Oh, actually, one piece of housekeeping. So this is really important for anybody who happens to be listening. There is a silver Kia parked over where it should not be parked at the gas station. So the license plate is Tennessee TNQ9XUV52. And if that's your license plate, you did not win a prize. You need to go over and move off the concrete because they're nice enough to give us a very good deal over there for parking. So if you can, please just move. Thank you. All right. Let's see. So what do we got for Hack My Homestead? I think I did that one last time. No, we didn't. All right. So my good buddy Sean, he's all about solar. He used to be Hack My Solar, and now he's Hack My Homestead. He does it all. He went full-time just about a year ago. He launched a Kickstarter on direct DC solar pumps, which some people roll their eyes and think, my goodness, that's boring. So if you did, he's not for you. But everybody else, go over and check him out because he's an awesome dude. And another good friend, Salima, she's inside. Homestead, Glamour Body, Butters, and more. She was nice enough to ship some up to Canada. My wife really enjoyed them. So go in and check her out. She has some really cool, I'm pretty sure they're all organic skincare products. So go in and check her out. What else do we have today? Well, I think you don't need an empty coffee cup, do you? Nope, we'll leave it right there for now. All right, so you guys here to hear Alan speak? So normally when I get asked to introduce a speaker, I've at least had a half an hour conversation with them. And I'm not the type of guy that likes to come up and just BS my way through. So Alan was nice enough to give me a conversation with a whole bunch of $2 words. And then he put a discount on them, brought them down to 50-cent words to make me feel just a little bit better. So whenever you do construction or anything else, there is a thing called an engineer that almost everybody doesn't like. But Alan is one of the good engineers. So I had to go there. It's like, if you're a lawyer, I got to make a lawyer joke, right? So this dude is top notch. He's passionate about permaculture, resiliency. Some of the stuff he just talked to me about will blow you out of the water. So here we are. We're going to talk today about how resilient is your kitchen. Take it away, sir. You got your microphone already good?
I think we're good.
All right, you are
Very
good.
good.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, welcome. And so when Nicole asked me to speak, we were talking about what people would be interested in. And she knew that I had, almost under protest, decided to do a book on kitchen systems. And it's one of those deals where, I kept on looking around and going, somebody must have done this, right? There's how many books are there on kitchen stuff? And somebody must have done this. And I kept on looking around and nope, couldn't find it. So, and people kept on asking. When we would do workshops, we would do things on food systems, resilient food systems, and so forth. And we would talk about and we would show what we were doing to integrate the kitchen into the overall food system. People would be like, where is this? I can find this. So we got pulled into starting to work on a book called The Resilient Kitchen, and looking at how you would actually integrate your kitchen into your overall food system and how you would make that more resilient. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. If you would like to play along in a minute, we're going to do a quiz. And so if you want to look at it, it's flexiquiz.com/live. Let me make certain I got that spelled right. Yep. And once you go there, and you'll put in this number, and then you can sign in with a nickname. And in a minute, we're going to kind of have some fun and go through. We'll do a couple slides, and then we're going to do a little bit of a quiz. And that's going to help us walk through all of it. So the question is, how in the world did an engineer, starting off electrical engineering, getting pulled into systems engineering, actually wind up doing this as a side thing? And I think it kind of goes back to those days in when I was very young, and I go up with my parents to visit my grandparents every year in West Virginia, and I would end up working in the garden with my grandmother. She had a 1-acre garden and an amazing root cellar, wall of canned goods and so forth. And it was a little older when I finally realized what that meant, because she raised 12 children during the Great Depression. Now think about that one for a minute. And so, every time I see that little meme, you seen the meme with the grandmother looking lady in the garden, and it says, Grandma survived the Great Depression because her supply chains were local and she knew how to do stuff, right? Every time I see that, I'm reminded of my grandmom. And because I would go up there and I would watch her cook fresh food from scratch coming out of the garden every day we were there. And so that keeps on coming back to me as I think about this question of, what's it going to take as our supply chains become more stressed, and getting good food becomes more and more impossible? What's going to take for us to deliver high value food reliably? And I grew up from being with my grandmom in her garden, went to engineering school, got pulled out of that, went into systems engineering and large-scale systems engineering. From that, pretty quickly started realizing how much of a disaster we were making of things as engineers. And so I started trying to figure out how we were going to address all of it. And that pulled me into permaculture and large-scale regenerative design. I do a lot of consulting on that. And then the food stuff comes right in, because if you cannot feed people high-value food, you cannot keep them healthy, and you can't have good community. So that's where we are. So I got to thinking about this, and it's like, why is having a resilient kitchen such an important thing? And from my perspective, working in the engineering side in large infrastructure, my first thoughts are kind of this: 5 things. One is food costs are going up, and from everything I can tell you, from working with large-scale parts of our food system, what do you think they're going to keep on doing? They're going to keep on going up. It's built into the pie now, the way that everything is being done. I think we all know that. Number 2 is that access to good food is going down for both market and regulatory reasons. It's almost impossible now to buy good food. Anybody realize that? What you're buying is more expensive, but it's also just crap. So there's number 2. Number 3, grid disruptions are going to probably over the next decade become more common. And what I mean by this is I'm not talking about the zombie apocalypse, everything collapses. I'm talking about even if we manage to keep everything mostly going, what I expect to see from the engineering side is that our grid infrastructure, and by that I mean power, I mean supply chains, I mean natural gas distribution, I mean all of that will become less reliable and more prone to disruption. So don't just think, how am I going to keep myself fed if the grid goes down for, because everything collapses. It's like, what are you going to do when all of a sudden the challenge is that the grid goes up and down? It's like, I don't know when the grid's going to be up. I don't know when it's going to be down. I don't know when the natural gas is going to be working, when it's not. All of that. Okay. Number 4 is that we are in what I call the death spiral of industrial agriculture. I end up going in and doing guest lectures at a lot of like graduate level agronomy and agroecology courses. And I do a lecture called The Death Spiral of Industrial Agriculture. And I explain systematically why it is that the way we're doing industrial agriculture is actually in a death spiral right now. And I don't have time to do that. That's an hour-and-a-half lecture. But the news I have for you is I've done that in graduate level courses in agronomy in many places around the country. And so far, nobody's been able to refute what I've said. So we are in the point. I'll just give you one factoid. For every ton of food produced by the industrial food system we have right now, according to the way it's grown, we lose 5 to 8 tons of topsoil. Okay, now figure that one out. And that's one small reason we're in this death spiral of industrial agriculture. Okay, and number 5, making your own food from scratch is the only way to be healthy in today's industrial, agricultural, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at and have fun looking at these different things and let you do a little quiz to along with me as we talk through the different aspects of kitchen resilience. So if you want to play along, like I said, here it is, flexiquiz.com/live. And then here's the number. Put in your nickname. And here's the one, there's 2 little things about this quiz. Number 1 is once we start, make certain that you keep your phone live because it does funny things if you let your phone go to sleep. So keep your phone live. And number 2 is when we get into the quiz, you'll select one of the options. Then you have to go down to the bottom of the screen and hit submit. Okay, so make certain once you've selected your option, you go to submit. Otherwise, you won't have submitted. So those are the 2 little things. So I'm going to start this in just a moment. But while we're getting everybody online that wants to be online, I'm going to give you my bullet list of 12 things I thought about as what are the hallmarks of a resilient kitchen. Like, what does it look like? And so here's my list. 1, produces nutrient-dense real food with nutritional integrity. Number 2, it supports the health of the people it's feeding. Number 3, it creates value. Right? Number 4 is it saves you money. Number 5, it produces no waste because waste is actually leaking money and leaking resources. Okay. Number 6, it functions off-grid when needed. Number 7, it connects to local food production and uses local food production, and then its outputs feed back into local food production. Number 8, it uses what is available locally that is in season plus what you have in storage. Number 9, it uses local distributed storage instead of massive centralized warehouses. The current system is, let's put all the food where? In a warehouse and do just-in-time distribution. A resilient kitchen, where do you think, what do? We distribute it, okay, and we use many points of distributed storage instead of a few points of concentrated storage, okay? It integrates into the nutrient cycle. That is, that all of the nutrients that we are going to be using in our system go right back into the food production system locally, okay? It functions as part of a regenerative, sustainable system. I don't have too much time to get into that today. And then number 12, it supports community. It's a community building thing. To have a resilient kitchen is a highly community building thing. I think we saw that from the previous presentation that was going on. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to start, and we're going to go through this quiz and together, and I'm going to go ahead and start it. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a couple of slides here that you'll be able to see. And for those of you who aren't on the quiz, I'm going to try to kind of like tell you what they're seeing on the slides right now. The first is one of the flow charts from the book, and it's called the Industrial Food System Flow. And what we're showing is basically extraction of natural resources in manufacturing a food-like substance that they try to feed to you, and then it goes into the landfill. That's what we're doing. That's part of the reason the whole thing is collapsing. The next slide that we're going to look at, and so I'm just showing these things really quickly to give you an idea of like what's in the book, is this. What does a resilient kitchen actually look like? Well, it shows how we're using food production, local food production, and coming into the kitchen and then producing very high quality meals, and then all the outputs from that, food scraps, everything else, are going right back in, and we're completing the nutrient cycle. So this is actually a closed cycle system instead of an extractive system. The next thing is the food shed zones. And again, I won't have time to go through all this. This is normally a whole discussion we get into. But what it's showing is this idea of what is your food shed? Where's your food coming from and how far? And it has some goals in it as to how much are you producing locally on your own land, how much is being produced in the community, how much is from farms that are within a 2-hour drive of you, and how much is coming from more than a 2-hour drive. And guess what our target is for more than a 2-hour drive? Less than 10%. And part of that reason is that there are some things we can bring in that are high value that we can do without. Like some of the spices are really hard to grow here. We can bring those in. They're a high value add. We can bring in a small amount of that. And if we don't have it, we're not in trouble. Does that make sense? So that's it. And then the last little slide I'm going to show you before we get into the quiz is this one. Another little bit to think about on is, do you understand and thought your way through what it looks like to take something out of your food production system? In this case, the one I'm showing you on the quiz is corn. And what do you do with that? What are all the different options you can do with corn? How do you harvest it? What do you do with the silage? What do you do with all of the side products and so forth? Okay. And you can nixtamalize it. What happens when you do that? You can make hominy and all the different things you can do with corn. And so what we're doing is, for all of your staples, we're doing flow charts like this that show you how to make absolutely 100% usage of every bit of what you're producing, how to, all the different options, and then how to return all those nutrients into your food production system. So that's another little element that's going into this whole idea. So any questions on that before I jump in and start on the quiz? All right.
Say there'd be a test, Alan.
It's a quiz, not a test. All right. Right. So here's what we're going to look at. We're going to talk about the 5 levels of kitchen resilience. And if you're playing along on the slides, then you see that I've kind of defined 5 levels for you. Actually, there's 6, because there is a level 0, which is like we got nothing, right? And so when we go through the quiz, you're going to be able to rate yourself on each one of these 12 dimensions. You're going to be able to rate yourself from 0 to 5. And part of the whole idea by going through this is, if I just say, you need to make your kitchen more resilient, that's not very actionable. But if I go through one aspect at a time and talk about it, and you rate yourself honestly, then it gives you, where am I strong and where can I improve? And then you can make some notes and go, okay, that's a weak spot in the way I am using my kitchen as part of a resilient overall food system. And so that gives you some action, give you some maybe some goals going out. Okay, so level 0 on each one of these is like no resilience at all. Level 5 is going to be very high resilience, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are in the middle. And I'm going to give you on each one of these, there's going to be examples and so forth. So What we're going to do now is we're going to actually go into the questions, and I'm going to go through the 12 with you. Remember as we go that I'm going to have to give you a warning that we're about to close the question, okay? So your question's going to come up, you're going to get to see it, read the options, and we'll talk through it with you for a minute, and we'll give you a warning when I'm going to close the question. So make certain you select your option and hit submit, and then when we go forward, your answer will be recorded so you can get your score at the end, okay? If you're playing along. So here we go. Let's go into the 12 dimensions of food resilience. And the first is non-toxic kitchen, right? Non-toxic kitchen. Because most of the time when I go in and start looking at kitchens they ask me to cook in, there's toxic gick everywhere, okay? Non-stick pans. How many of you have 0 non-stick pans in your house? Thank you. Okay. How about aluminum? How many have 0 aluminum pans in your house? Thank you very much. Okay. How about this? What is this? It's a wooden cutting board. Do you use wood or plastic for your cutting boards? Wood. Okay. So what we're looking at here here's another thing. What is this? It's my homemade cleaner. And it's vinegar-based with essential oils. If you put the normal cleaner on your food, what happens? You have a call to the poison center. You put this on your food, you just have a little weird flavor, but otherwise you're fine. Okay, so non-toxic kitchen. You'll see in here that the dimensions of your non-toxic kitchen. Oh, and by the way, I have this one too. Glass storage. Right? Non-plastic storage. You'll see that I'm storing all of my stuff in glass, right? So you're going to see 3 dimensions that we work with. The degree to which all the surfaces you're using to prepare and cook your food are non-toxic, the degree to which the surfaces you use to store your food are non-toxic, and the third is the degree to which you use non-toxic cleaners in your house, okay? So you can look there if you're playing along on the quiz from 0 to 5, and go ahead and choose your option. Hit submit. How many of you are feeling like you're like a 5 here? Anybody? We got a couple. Awesome. 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 All right. So we're going to close down this question in about 20 seconds. And, I want to say we have done the science on this. I've been part of the scientific team that's looked at this. It's amazing how much of the stuff from a cooking service gets into your food. Like we were looking at how much PFAS gets out of a nonstick into your food when you cook with it. You don't even want to know, I'll guarantee you, okay? So my kitchen is a no toxic zone. And so that's one area for a resilient kitchen because you're not going to have long-term health if you got toxins going into your food and into your body. All right, I'm now going to go forward. So we got 3 people that are a 0, and we got 1 person who's a 5 out of everybody who answered the question. A lot of people are around a 2 or a 1. All right, so we're going to go on forward now into question 2, which is the resilience of your kitchen technology, okay? And this we break down into 3 main categories. The ability to cook when electric power or natural gas goes out. How well set up are you to do that? Number 2, the ability to keep the fridge or freezer running during an outage. And number 3, access to food processing tools that can work off grid. I won't tell you how many kitchens I've gone into where they don't have this. The power goes down and the bloody electric can opener will not work, right? And they don't have, how many of these do you think I have? I have 3, okay, because 3 is 2 and 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? Okay. How about this? Yeah. Okay. You think it, absolutely. And then how about this? Anybody know what this is? This is a thermal cooker. This is basically your crock pot with no plug. What you do, stainless steel, you get your dish up to wooden boiling for a few minutes, and then you put it in this thing. It's basically a big thermos. You close it down, and it will now cook in its own heat for the next 4 hours. It's basically a crock pot with no plug, okay? It'll keep it warm for like 8 hours. So a lot of times when I'm going on the road, we've got lunch crock potting in the back seat of the car, okay? So how about this? What is this? Camp Dutch oven. How many of you have a Camp Dutch oven? Absolutely, right? Okay, you can bake just about anything you can bake in an oven here if you know what you're doing, okay? So I could go on about that for a long time, but think about this. How well can you keep yourself in cooking off grid? Now, by the way, if you're thinking, oh, I got propane, I'm good. Is that grid or non-grid? That's grid. It's what we call grid with a buffer, right? The electricity, if electricity goes down, you're out of business when? Now, if you don't have your own power back. If you've got natural gas, same thing. If the natural gas feed goes down, you're out now. If you have propane in the tank, you're connected to the grid, but you're connected to the grid with a buffer. Okay, so you got some resilience there, right? But if you are able to cook with your own wood, you can basically do that for as long as you can grow wood. All right, so go ahead and look at these options from 0 to 5. 0 is like I have nothing. If the power goes down, I'm out. I'm out of business, right? All the way up to 5. I'm fully off grid. I can do wood or biogas stoves. I got a year of fuel off on the side, multiple solar cooking options, high efficiency fridge or freezer running fully off grid. How many of you have that? Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have my freezer on its own separate battery. So even if the rest of my system goes down, it has 3 days of autonomy. So if everything goes down while I'm away, my freezer will keep on freezing for 3 days on its own separate battery system. Okay? All right, go ahead. Last 10 seconds. If you're playing along with us, make your choices. We're going to close that one down. So this is option number 2, the resilience of your kitchen technology. All right. Going once, going twice. All right, we are going to close it down. We have a lot of folks again at the 1 or 2 level. We got 1 person at a 5. Congratulations. 4 at a 3. So very good. And then this gives me a leaderboard up here. So at the end, I'll get to like tell you whose nicknames are scoring the highest, if you guys would like to know. All right, let's go on to the next one, number 3. Resilience of the kitchen work environment. All right, so it's like, okay, great, we got the tools, but what if our work environment, we can't work? So I'm going to break this down into 4 categories. Lighting of the workspace during a power outage. How many of you have ever found yourself trying to cook in the kitchen like this? Anybody? Okay, do you ever want to do that again? No, it's dangerous. Okay, at the very least, a headlamp, right? The very least, one of these, please. They're magical. How about this? What is this? It's an LED that plugs right into my 12-volt battery, and I can hang this with a little clip up wherever I want it, and so forth. So if everything else goes down, I can now cook in my kitchen. We can just move it right over where we eat, and it uses almost 0 power, and boy, is this the thing. So that's your lighting. Do you have good lighting? Number 2, okay, the ability to have functional windows or doors so you can ventilate while if you're inside trying to work. Number 3, the ability to provide auxiliary cooling or heating to the work area. And then number 4 is the availability of an outdoor kitchen or outdoor cooking space that can be used when the indoor kitchen is too hot for cooking tasks. Okay? Those are the 4 different aspects that of the environment itself, right? And so think about that. What is your environment? Do you have a good place outside? If it's the middle of summer, it's 101 degrees outside, and you're needing to cook. You probably don't want to be in a kitchen without cooling, right? So do you have a place outside that's set aside for that? Or do you have the ability to go off grid and cool or even heat your space? Okay, so look at those options, and I see answers coming in. So we're going to give you another couple seconds on this one. You know, one of the things you're kind of, as we're finishing up these answers, one of the things I keep on coming back to is this idea. When you are doing a kitchen setup like this, it's got equipment, and it's equipped in a way that's completely different from an ordinary kitchen. I mean, how many ordinary kitchens have that? What is this, by the way? It's a bone saw, right? I pulled this out of my kitchen. It's like, yep, most standard suburban kitchens do not come equipped with this. Okay, so you need to think about how differently we're considering the kitchen so it can be an integral part of the overall food system, right? All right, I got 21 answers, so I think we're going to go forward. Last 5 seconds. Anybody else want to give their answer before we go forward? Going once, going twice. All right. So we got a bunch of people at 2. That's our one. We got, the vast majority of people are at 2. That's interesting. All right. We got one person at a 5. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on now to number 4, water sources. Water sources. We're going to break this down into 3 categories. Where your water comes from and whether it's properly filtered. Number 2, what kind of water bottle you use to carry the water with you. And number 3, whether you have backup water sources and how much emergency water reserve you keep per person. Now, this is me, okay, 40-ounce water bottle. And by the way, what do you think's in here? Any guesses? The way of making fire. There is a compass. There's my emergency first aid kit and a bunch of other stuff, just like this. It always goes with me because I always got my water. And so there it is, right? Stainless steel with stainless steel cap. And that way, I don't drink bottled water. I've actually done the microscopy study on how many bits of microplastic come out of those. Okay. If you drink that, can you hold that water bottle up? Okay. Probably 10 to 50,000 particles of microplastic will go in your body when you drink that water, which is why I don't drink out of those things. Yeah. And it's not good. Yes, ma'am.
Did you know that they did a documentary that no one even has to test the quality of bottled water?
That's correct.
The quality of the water that goes into the bottle is no better than
Tap water.
tap water.
That's correct.
So it's just
You're paying a lot of money for tap water.
just for someone to put it in.
Exactly. Now, really quickly, what I would say is that if you are running a kitchen and if you're trying to work off of emergency water, if you are really good, you can make it on 2 gallons per person per day. But that's very, very water conservation. That's very little. 5 gallons per person per day is much better. The USDA says that the average consumption of water per person in America is 75 gallons a day. Just to give you an idea of what the numbers look like, okay? So where we're looking at is you're getting high quality water. Is it properly filtered? Do you have emergency backup water sources? Whether that be in, your own well, but hey, what if the power goes down? Can you run your well without grid power, right? So these are all questions that come into it. By the time we get up to a 5 on this level, you got your own multiple independent water sources and you can run it off grid. Okay? You're carrying your own water around with you. And yes, I carry extra water in my car when I travel so I can refill that thing. Okay? So I'm not dependent on water as I'm traveling around, because sometimes you cannot find good water for your life. Okay? Or they want to, you get to pay a huge amount of water of money per gallon. You realize bottled water is in many cases more expensive than gasoline per gallon when you go looking at it. Okay, so there we go. All right, go ahead and put your answers in and think about this, because if we don't have water in the kitchen, we're out of business, right? So how resilient are your water sources? What does that look like? Give you a couple more seconds, see if few more folks probably have answers to put in. And then we're going to go forward. Going once, going twice. Yes.
Quick question while you're waiting. You said that drinking out of the stainless steel is the way to go, but what about glass?
Glass is fine. Glass is absolutely fine. The only reason I don't carry glass is this has been on 6 continents with me. You see all the dents? Every one of those dents is a broken glass, right? So this has traveled with me, like I said, literally to 6 continents over 20 years. And so, yeah, that's why I don't carry glass. I mean, if you can handle glass without breaking it, I can't. I'd break it. All right. We're going to go ahead and finish up this answer and go forward. Do not use copper. Copper is a toxic accumulator in the body. Yeah. Yeah. I don't put water in copper. The copper will leach into the water, and that's a toxic accumulator in the body. All right. Number 5. Got to speed up here. Food sources. We're going to like this down into 3 categories. Where do you get the food you eat? How often you eat out at restaurants instead of preparing food at the home. And then number 3, the average number of miles your food travels between where it's produced and where you consume it. So, by the way, what's usually cited as the average number of food miles for food in America? 1,500 miles. That's why you'll see that in as like the baseline option. I had fun. I went to Whole Foods. Okay, and I got these. Again, what are they stored in? Raspberries. Guess where they come from? Mexico. Very good. Are raspberries in season here right now? No. All right. How about these? Organic grapes. Guess where they come from? Chile. Very good. Right? How many miles is that? It's an awful long way, right? We start to get into we start to cook and get our ways of cooking adapted around this. The ability to go to the store and just mindlessly grab whatever happens to be on the shelf without thinking about, is that in season? How far is it coming from? Right? Is that cost going to keep on going up and up and up as energy cost goes up? The answer is yes, it will. Okay? Will that become difficult to get as supply chain disruptions become more common? Yes, it will. Okay? So what we're looking at here with food sources is where you're getting your food and how local. So you're going to see on the different questions, is it 1,500 miles average for the food that you're eating? Is it more like 500 miles? Is it more like 50 miles? Is it more like most of it comes from your backyard? Right? So that's what we're looking at here under food sources. How far is your food coming from? Okay? Go ahead and finish answering that one. I gotta start moving fast now so we can get through the rest of the questions. Okay. We have a lot of people who are at a 3. That's really good. All right. We're going to go forward into number 6, food quality. Okay, great. We're getting our food. We're getting it locally and so forth. How high of a quality is our food, right? So while I was at Whole Foods, I also got this just for the fun of it. What do we have here? Organic cut green beans. Organic means it's good, right? What are you paying for when you pay for the organic label? The organic label. I'll tell you what I think about, having researched this a lot. Here's what I think. If I have to buy food from the industrial food system, I am paying extra for what's not in my food. That's what I'm doing. I'm paying for less toxic GIC in my food. Okay? Now, did I say no toxic GIC? No, there's still toxic GIC in here. Believe me. You're much less toxic GIC. So if you are having to source, if I have to source from the industrial food system, am I paying extra for organic? Yes, I actually am, because I know how much toxic junk is in the quote conventional stuff. So yeah, if I'm sourcing it, I'll pay. And of course, if I have to get it from the industrial food system from a grocery store, this label is the government making people put way too much paperwork on telling you they did not put all kinds of toxic GIC in your food. That's basically what you're paying for, okay? So, sure. Do I want to know my producer and know how they're growing the food? That's what I want. I have never found high nutrient density food any other way. And I've measured with mass spectrometers. I've measured, okay? The only time I've found nutrient dense real food is with people growing in ecologically correct soil. Never found it anywhere else, okay? So, we're looking at here with your food quality. Where are you getting it? How many toxic ingredients are in your diet? How much are you consuming seed oils, GMOs? How much do you have herbicide and pesticide residues? What's the percentage of food you consume that we would call it organic or better? Local production would be better. And then the diversity and overall health of the food produced by your kitchen. Are you having a diverse, well-balanced diet? So those are the things to think about in food quality. Right? Food quality. Okay, go ahead and finish answering. I'm going to go ahead and move forward because I got to go fast now. 5 more seconds. All right. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So we got a lot of people again around 2, and nobody at 5. Interesting. Okay. That's hard. It's really hard to do a 5 in today's system. I'll guarantee you. It really is. So, all right, let's go on forward. And now we're down to food storage. Okay. Now the question here is, right, how much food storage do you have so that you can comfortably feed your family with what you have in storage and what's coming out of your food production system and what you can trade with your immediate neighbors, right? How long can you feed? 0 is no food. 1 is 3 to 5 days. 2 is 1 to 2 weeks. 3 is 1 to 2 months. 4 is 3 to 6 months. And 5 is about a year before I have to replenish my stocks. Okay? So, you know, this is the mistake I see a lot, right? That's my food storage, right? Yeah, boy, I want to go on about 20 minutes about this because I want to tell you a couple things that are super important. Number 1, how many of you have eaten these? Okay. How many of you have eaten this for a week? What happens to you when you eat it for a week? It's a mess. So you have people whose whole idea is, I'm going to go buy either these or some higher quality, you know, Mountain House or whatever, right? And when the emergency comes, what we're going to do is we're going to do what? Pull these out, and that's going to become our diet. Okay, what is the absolute worst time in the universe to change your diet? High stress, right? The whole thing is, and we've seen this, it's been documented, especially children, especially elders, will shut down their appetite and they will stop eating. And you can shove these things in front of them all day long and they will literally starve. Okay? So, when you are going into a stress situation, that is the last time you want to be changing everybody's diet. So, this is why you keep on hearing this whole thing of store what you eat and eat what you store. That there's a reason that that's been said so many times. If you're not doing that, your system's not set up around that, it is not resilient. So just want to stop with that. So, all right, I think we've got most of the answers in. I'm going to give you 5 seconds and we're going to go forward. 4, 3, 10 minutes. I'll come in for a landing. Okay. Cool, we got 7 people, Nicole, that are 5. Which means that they can keep their family fed for a year before they have to replenish their staples. Awesome. We've got about 7 here who are at 3 to 6 months, and nobody with no food on hand. So awesome. Very good. All right. And then what we're going to do is go on forward. We got a couple more questions here. How about food preparation? Food preparation. We're going to break this down into just 2 categories. The percentage of food that's served, that's prepared in the kitchen instead of pre-made by the industrial food system, and then the percentage of ingredients that you're using that are what I call primary ingredients. And I brought a couple things along to show you. A primary ingredient would be, well, here we go, balsamic vinegar. That's a primary ingredient. It's not made up of anything else besides balsamic vinegar, right? Okay. Here's another one. This is organic soy sauce. Okay, if I read that, it's fermented soybeans and water, a primary ingredient. I went looking in my kitchen, and the only thing I could find that was not a primary ingredient was this. I happen to have my cheat, some organic hoisin sauce, right? This is what I call a secondary ingredient. The vast majority of what I make is from primary ingredients. I do not have a bottle of salad dressing in my house. Every bit of salad dressing is made in real time when I need it. I can make it in under 2 minutes. The reason for that is that you go looking at what is on the label in salad dressings. Stuff I don't want. Number 2 is typically the quality of the ingredient they stick in there is very low. By making it all myself from primary ingredients, I can stock much less stuff. I can make a much higher quality thing, make it quickly, and it tastes much better. And I save an awful bloody lot amount of money. Because if you go looking at how much they want to charge you for this, I can make it for 1/3 of the cost from primary ingredients. Okay? So there we go. Oh, here's another one. I brought it along. Bear. Anybody cook with bear? Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? It's an Ethiopian spice blend. Okay, we make our own, and it's like 4 times better than anything I can buy at like a fifth the cost. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. How much do you prepare your own? And then number 2 is how much are you cooking from primary ingredients instead of secondary ingredients, right? Okay, and oh, here we go. What is this? It's my impact mill. Okay, it's my impact mill. And what do we have here? Wheat berries, right? So when I'm making breads, what if I want to make cornbread? What do you think I have here? Yeah, corn. Okay. Taking this, I'll grind it myself, and then I will nixtamalize it, and we'll make hominy and all that sort of stuff. By the way, what's the challenge with this? What's the problem with this? Electricity. Number 2 is the impact heads I can't repair. So I have a country living mill that's motorized. I can run it by hand if I need to, and I can repair every bloody part of it. So I wouldn't have just by this. I actually have a country living backup for this. Okay. All right, let's go forward. I got a couple more questions, and we're going to finish up. If I can get my mouse again. It just went off in the weeds. There it is. All right. All right, last couple of questions. We're going to do them fast. Efficiency of ingredient use. We're going to break this down into 2 categories. How much food do you dispose because it's spoiled or whatever, and then how much of the food value of ingredients is extracted before you send it out? How much do you use all of your vegetable scraps and turn them into stock? How much do you take your cooking water from your potatoes and save that and use that? So take a look down through these. I got to go fast now. Okay, we're almost there. So go ahead and look through those because we've only got 2 more questions after this. We're just going to go through them super fast. Okay, so yeah, go ahead and answer these quickly. Efficiency of ingredient use. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And now we're going to go forward, and we're going to do our last one. Last couple of questions. Oh, keep on coming. Okay. Why is it not going forward? There we go. Okay. Handling of byproducts and production of food waste. Don't have a lot of time to get into this one. But this is reduction of paste. I have these here. Just going to say, I actually have almost zero waste going out of my kitchen. I use reusable napkins. When I go down to the farmer's market, I'm carrying these. These are all organic cotton. And so almost zero waste going out of my kitchen, because everything that's waste is more consumption I have to do on the front end and more money I have to spend. So go ahead, answer this one, and then I'm probably just going to have to talk you through the last 2 in 15 seconds. The number 11 is this. Number 11 is how many people are there in your kitchen that know how to run the food system? If you've only got one person and they get sick, you're out of business, right? Okay. So you need at least 2 people in the kitchen that know how to do everything, and hopefully at least a couple people who know how to fill in when they're not there. Okay, so we're going to go forward. I'm going to let you answer that question, and then the number 12 question is, how connected is your kitchen to your community? Do you have people around you with which you are interacting and sharing in your expertise about the kitchen? Okay, because if you're completely isolated, boy, that's hard to sustain. If you have people around you you can share with, you can encourage each other, and you can help each other out when there's problem, when your family's in crisis or whatever, your kitchen resilience just went way up, okay? So those are the 12 dimensions. I'm going to keep, while we start to transition, I'm going to keep the 12th question up so you can look at it. And then we're going to transition on over. I have to get some stuff out of the way here in a minute.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
Very much. Nicole wants to take a picture with, yeah, go
Where
ahead.
can people
Yes.
talk to you for questions after this if they want to?
Yeah, if they want to come and follow up with
Oh, okay. I'll be around for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
Just come find me.
Yeah.
And
We
so
had a
forth.
couple of you,
Cooking on wood in the corner, it's probably him.
Yeah.
we had a couple of YouTube questions that we didn't get to.
Okay.
If you wanted to pop over with Rebecca after and just give a quick type in answer, we can
Sure.
do that too if you want. And if not, that's
Absolutely.
okay too. So
Yep.
I have a feeling
Yep.
that your presentation could be an entire 8-hour workshop, couldn't it?
I could do this as a week-long boot camp.
That's incredible. I got
Yep.
10 minutes of it. It's all I got. And I wish I had a lot more, but
And so the question 12 is up. If you're playing along, you can finish up the quiz, and that will give you it. And what you're going to wind up with is a score, and that score is going to tell you about where you're going to rank and so forth. But all I'd say to finish up is think about where you scored high, where you scored low, and maybe make some goals out of that, right? Think about where you have the most room for increasing the resilience of your food system.
So Mike's going to want that handheld.
yeah, I'll get that over to him in just a minute. So thanks, Alan. If you
Yep.
want to, Nicole wants to snap a picture. We're trying to get we can
Absolutely.
clean this up as we're,
Yep.
anybody learn anything? Okay. Yeah, that was here. Yes, please. You know what's really cool is every time I meet somebody new, there's this entire 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon behind it. And in this case, I think it's Paul Wheaton that was 6 degrees of separation. But every single time, you know, I've done it many times in our community. I'm like, how did I meet this person? Because of this person and that person and this person. And that's why Alan's up here speaking. And that's why I got to have a 5-minute incredible conversation with him and why he get to come and share what he knows. So remember, guys, every time, I don't know how many new faces I've seen, but it's blowing me out of the water. So thanks for sharing, Alan. It was
Absolutely.
awesome. Appreciate it. One more hand for Alan.
Thanks.
All right, real quick. We did really well. I appreciate you getting off the stage right. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. No, we got a couple of sponsors right quick. But so for those who don't know, At Home, well, there's folks following At Home live on YouTube right now. So for the first half of the morning, it's free for everybody. And if anybody's at home who wants to sign up for the digital pass, go to selfreliancefestival.com. You can. But those two right there are the ones who made the online stuff happen. They sponsored us Signature Solar and Bearings, Belts, and Chain Incorporated. So again, that's the power of community. You get folks who are like, I'm willing to put my money where it needs to be, and we go from there. So who else well, I know we got Mike coming up, and I think I've got my sponsors out of the way. Oh, 2:00, there is going to be a wild edibles walk at the, you guys know where the greenhouse tent is back here? Okay, so there's this beautiful woman 45 minutes before that giving a presentation over there. I think she's my wife, so I better check. No, so she'll be there, and as soon as she's done, Carrie Brown is going to be doing, and he's an awesome friend. If you guys don't know Carrie, you need to take a minute and find out because he knows his wild edibles, and not the stuff that makes you trip. He knows the stuff that keeps you alive. So yeah, I bet he would. He'd tell. I think once in a while he's like, Tim, just eat that mushroom. You know. So no, he's good. So we'll get him there. Oh yeah, go ahead.
High score goes to Sean.
Sean?
Yeah,
All right.
Sean.
High
Sean's a
score goes to Sean. Excellent. Oh, that good. Right on.
Yep.
So yeah, so don't forget the wild edibles over here. Yeah, that sounds really bad. I didn't bring the edibles from Canada. You guys know THC and everything's legal up there. We're not doing that down here. So, but yeah, go over, see Carrie. He'll walk you around. Are we good to bring Mike up? All right. Yeah. No, you're good. So I first met Mike last year at Prepper Camp. Again, the power of community. He was nice enough, didn't know me, and I think I maybe scared him a little bit because he's like, who's that crazy Canadian guy? But he was willing to sit down and share his knowledge, and he has an incredible amount of it. So comes from the Forward Observer. He's the type of guy who, before he moves to a community, sleeps in his neighbor's backyard to make sure they're not Republicans or Democrats. And no, I'm just kidding. He also makes sure he doesn't move where football teams that you don't like are, that kind of thing.
Most important. That's the most important part of your area study.
Absolutely. So I don't cut into his time anymore. You're all good. I will introduce Mike, and you're doing an area study. Is that today's? Building an Intel network. And I've yet to be lucky enough to listen to more than 10 minutes of his presentation because that's just how these events go. But I watch them on the recording. So without further ado, let's hear it from Mike.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk on Intel networks. This is a very big topic. We don't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to try to do is give you a frame of reference and then give you some tasks that you can do to start building your own local information sharing network if you prefer. We need information. We need access to information because we have to make good decisions. And the more timely and relevant, accurate, specific, or predictive intelligence we have, the better and faster our decisions can be. And when we're in an emergency and we need to make time-sensitive decisions, how do we do that best? With actual real-time information coming in that we can turn into intelligence. And so if I can just start on one of the biggest problems facing the preparedness community, I'm a reluctant prepper, is, and I know this because I had this problem too, there is a tendency for us to leave the cities and go move out and start our homestead and get disconnected from the grid and leave that whole world behind. The problem with that is we are ceding institutional power and authority to the people who use it, because these people get in power and they use it. And so that leaves us it leaves us less powerful, and in many cases, relatively powerless to make any changes. And I'm not here to debate whether the system can be changed, because I honestly don't care what they do in DC. I care what happens in my neighborhood, in my city council, what's going on in my county. And frankly, our circle of influence and our circle of concern should be pretty close to a complete, overlapping circle, right? Because I don't want to be heavily concerned about stuff that I can't change, but I can change stuff at the local level. And so the problem is we're disconnecting ourselves from these power centers without building new institutions and new centers of power where we live today at the local level in a rural area. Counties still do have political power, and in some states they can wield quite a bit of political power. And this matters because we can go back to Colonel John Boyd, pretty famous Air Force general. He talks about the OODA loop, but I want to home in on what he calls a grand strategy. And John Boyd's grand strategy is connecting yourself to as many power centers and lines of support as you can, while disconnecting your opponent from as many lines of support and power centers as you can. So when we go in retreat mode and we're going to go be a prepper and a homesteader and get off the grid, we're disconnecting ourselves. They don't have to do it for us. We're doing it to ourselves. So my message is pretty simple. Wherever you live today, wherever you move, we need to harness the power of community. We need to build information networks because we can have actionable intelligence. That's why we do an area study. It's a blueprint for action to improve our own political, social, and economic power at the local level. So when we build new institutional power, we become more powerful. And so we can't disconnect ourselves from one power center and not reconnect into another. Makes sense? And this is a big problem for us as well, because socialists, I'm not going to get too overtly political here, but socialists use this dual power strategy. Okay, it's not enough to pursue electoral politics. It's not enough to get our guy in charge. We also have to build social power. And what happens is political power and social power end up self-reinforcing. We can use social power to get politicians elected, and then politicians can push money through their patronage networks effectively, and give these social movements more money to do more stuff, to do more recruiting, to do more information and outreach, to grow the movement, which reinforces the political power. And this is something that the left does. They know how to do it. They do these training sessions online all the time. And it's just not something I see our community doing. That's one thing I would like to change, is build institutional power where we live. So the other problem is, if we're not building institutional power where we live, and by that I mean political power and social power, so the power of people, and economic power, so using our dollars to affect change, starting businesses, making money, using those profits to refunnel back into our efforts, because this is effectively how the left uses the government. If we are not doing that at the local level, it's just a matter of time. I'm sure many of you live in what were solid red counties. I used to live in a solid red area of Austin, Texas. Over the past 10 years, it's turned purple. Now it's solid blue. And it's just, man, this county, this area of Austin used to go 70, 80 points for Republicans, and now it's going 50, 60 points for Democrats. And that's because they've mastered the self-reinforcing cycle. And I don't want to get too extreme here, but communists call this political decay. All right, we saw this happen during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Also happened in Indochina. Ho Chi Minh and Vo Zap. They did this against the French, and then against the Americans right after that in Vietnam. Indochina's present-day Vietnam. And they use a strategy of political decay. So what they do is they go into an area, and maybe it's just one person. They have a political agent that goes in there, and they start agitating and propagandizing, and they recruit another communist. And now they're running this little communist cell. And then before you know it, they're taking political power. And they do this, and they still do this today, village by village, district by district, province by province, until they have taken the entire country. And that is exactly what's happening today in this country. And so we need to be building power to keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff in. And one way we do this is by building intelligence networks. Now, interestingly, the North Vietnamese General Vo Zap said that when it comes to fighting these people's wars, propaganda units are more important than infantry units. And you think, wow, how's that? I want a big infantry. I want a big combat arms. I want a lot of soldiers and, go prosecute this war in Vietnam. And the problem is, the more propaganda you have, actually less reliant you are on actual kinetic part of war fighting. The more minds you can change, the more you can convince people to join your movement, the less war fighting you're actually going to have to do. And that's something that the communists understood in pretty much every single communist revolution that I've ever read about. And so the question is, what can we do about it? And one way is we start a local information sharing network or an intelligence network. Now, if your main problem is not defending your geographical space from the influence of collectivism, then maybe it's for emergency preparedness and community security, which I also commiserate with you. So I wrote a whole book on it. It's called the Area Intelligence Handbook. And so when I go through and look at information, people have information, and there's information online, and we can collect information and produce intelligence lots of different ways. But the more access we have to information, the better decisions that we can make. And in an emergency, think about time-sensitive decisions. We want lots of access to information. So effectively, we need people. We need neighbors. And not just neighbors. I'm a little person where I live. I need big people. I need people in politics and in business and in finance and in law enforcement. And I need lots of people feeding us information so that we can stay ahead of the curve and be proactive rather than reactive. Now, just a little bit about me. My name is Mike Shelby. I'm a former intelligence analyst. I spent over 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, about 40 months. And what I do today is teach individuals and communities how to do an area study and how to analyze and assess your area, how to figure out what your threats and hazards and vulnerabilities are, because that's the stuff we need to counteract. And then also, the second half is identifying what our resources, assets, and opportunities are. These are people and groups and things I need to be developing so that my assets and resources are bigger than my threats and hazards. And if we can do that, then we can probably win the future. And if we can't do that, we're probably going to lose the future. And the problem is we haven't been doing that enough. There are people who are doing that. And so I'm not going to argue with Napoleon. He said war is 90% information. Conflict, emergencies, SHTF, grid down, Mad Max, whatever your doomsday scenario of choice is going to be about 90% information, because information is incredibly powerful. We have to have access to it. And so one thing I've done in my area to start building my local intelligence network is it's now grown to a 7-county area preparedness network. And we hold a meeting once a month, and we provide free training. So we've had a sheriff's deputy come out who's also a member of our preparedness network, and he gave a class on active shooter considerations. And we've had our medics and paramedics come out and give a class on cold weather injury prevention. We've done stop the bleed. We've done emergency communications. We did that last month. And so what we're doing is trying to build a magnet, basically a recruiting pool. People invite their friends and family. We invite people from the community. It's a 1 to 2, maybe 3 or 4 hour training. We give it to them for free. That's our magnet. We bring people in, and then we get to talk to them, and they get to feel us out. We get to feel them out, and we make friends, and we meet new people in the community. And we've been able to we have a local judge. He's a federal judge now. We have law enforcement, we have fire, we have business, we have buku millionaires. And this has been a really, really good recruiting tool for us because I don't just want people, I also want access to their information. Oh, we have a banker. Hey, here's what's going on in the county. Here's how the next financial crisis is going to affect our bank in this area. And the more I know about that, the more we can begin to start preparing for that event. And so that really is the value of intelligence. So one thing that we can do, everyone has a friend, at least one friend, sit down and just make a list, start making a list of all the people that you know in the county, in your area. And then choose one of those people and say, you know what, I bet we could get this person to attend a meeting. The very first meeting I called, there were 4 people. 4 people came to our very first preparedness meeting. And I stepped them through the area study process. We sat down, we built an area study that Saturday. And that was the last time we had 4 people. You know, now we're having much larger meetings, 20, 50 people. And so the goal here of this is again, start recruiting people locally, get them roped into our network. And now we can start tasking those people individually. You know, this guy works at a bank. This guy works in law enforcement. He's a 20-year sheriff's deputy. Hey, talk to me. I have Latin Kings in my county. I didn't know that before I started talking to this sheriff's deputy. Tell me about Latin Kings. What are they doing in here? Oh, they're running drugs. They're getting into trafficking. They're, doing X, Y, and Z. And that's something that I can use in my area study and say, are they going to ever pose a threat to me or pose any kind of hazard? What are the second, third, and fourth order effects of them moving into this county? And what can we do about it? And the great thing is, the more people I know, the more power I have to protect ourselves. So I'm getting threat information from law enforcement officers and sheriff's deputies, and that's feeding our decision-making process. And so my question to you is, are there people in your community who would be interested in one Saturday a month, let's just go and talk about local issues? Do you have people like that in your area that you can start building a preparedness network? We're not a prepper group. It's a preparedness network. And all we're doing is attracting like-minded people into these meetings and sharing information so that we can make better decisions about the future. The next question I have for you is, who are the key influencers in your area? One thing we're trying to do now is work with local churches, because I don't want to look at a church and say, well, there's 500 people in this church, and I don't want to go up to them individually, all 500 of them. So what can I do? We'll go offer to do a free emergency preparedness seminar on Wednesday night at their church. And so if I can find that pastor, that minister, and I can influence him and I can change his mind, hey, actually emergency preparedness would be a great thing for my church. Great. Well, let's set up a Wednesday night. We'll talk about how to prepare for tornadoes, because that's the most common threat and hazard in my area. And all of a sudden I'm reaching hundreds of people that I would never have reached before. And so who are the key influencers in your area that you can link up with and then get access to their network? Because that's the secret of building your network, is getting access to other people's networks and then bringing them in. And not in a nefarious way, obviously, but we're working for the good of the community. The less dependent our community is, the better we're all going to be during an emergency. And so that's kind of our strategic goal here. So what politicians or what people in politics, who in politics do we know? Sit down with your group, start making a list. Here's all the people in the whatever county party. This guy's on the city council or on the school board or whatever he or she is. How about social groups? Are there charitable groups or food banks or any kind of humanitarian groups that already exist in your county who would say, you know what, Mike, I really like your mission of emergency preparedness. How can we help? As an intel guy, I'm interested in information. But, ultimately we can start recruiting for other missions like search and rescue, linking up with our sheriff and saying, hey, look, we've got a group of 15 veterans. We'll have swiftwater rescue training. We'll have tactical combat casualty care. We got medical training. We know how to run radios. We know how to observe and report information. So the next time that 7-year-old kid gets lost in the national forest, I hope the sheriff's going to call us up and say, hey, can y'all come and help us out? Yeah, absolutely. We'll be there in a couple hours. And what does this do for us on the back end? I add that sheriff to my network. He knows he can call on us. And the next time I have a question about what's going on at the local level, who's going to be able to give me inside baseball? That person on the city council, or that person on the county commission, or that sheriff. And so that really is the prime message here of community outreach. I just use the preparedness network and volunteer opportunities like search and rescue as a vehicle to make those new connections. And I hope that's making sense for everyone. Now, how did I meet, when I first moved to my area, how did I meet folks in law enforcement? I started doing ride-alongs. And not on like a Tuesday afternoon, like Friday and Saturday night when the zoo animals come out. And I really get to know my area. What does my area look like after I go to sleep? And so you do that. And a lot of these guys, they're working the night shift. They're lonely. And guess what they do the whole time? Talk about everything going on in your area. So that is a form of human intelligence collection called liaison. And that's a really great idea. And I would highly encourage you to pursue those opportunities. After that, I got enrolled in the Citizens Police Academy. And I learned all about various functions of the criminal justice system in my city. And I met a lot of people. And one of the first guys that joined the preparedness group from the preparedness network is a police officer. And the first thing I did when we started talking about other people, I said, who else at the police? Check. Oh, who else? What other police officers are into preparedness? Which police officers like hunting? Which police officers like fishing? I love hunting and fishing. Guess what? We're going to take those guys hog hunting. We're going to take those guys fishing. And again, right, I'm just trying to improve my level of access, meeting more people who have power and influence and information, people who can feed me information wittingly or unwittingly. They don't have to know, oh, Mike's going to use this for his area study. They can be an unwitting source. If we have time, we'll talk about that stuff later. Also, volunteering opportunities. You could volunteer with your county sheriff's office. Many of them have fundraisers or bake sales or, whatever their car washes, whatever they're doing. Go and volunteer and meet those people. And when that county sheriff or that county commissioner or whoever, your local politicians, see your face a few times, and you're like, oh, wow, this person is showing up and pitching in and helping out. Now I'm going to meet this person. And I add another node to my network. And some of you may be thinking, well, Mike, I don't have that much time because I've got a full-time job. I work 60 hours a week. I got 3 kids. We got soccer and ballet and piano and all this other stuff. The power of the network is that I don't have to go to all these things. I say, Tom, can you go to the city hall meeting next Tuesday night? Yes, I can. Kevin, go do this. Bob, can you do this? Richard, can you go do this? Karen. And it's a team tackle. Intelligence is a team sport, right? So we can start tasking people to go to all these various meetings and link up with people and build rapport and build relationships and friendships and then work them into our network. So when I say build political, social, and economic power, this is, we are starting to accrue power and influence by doing this stuff. So another way we can start building our intelligence network is simply by looking at what are called requirements. And requirements is a technical term, and it just describes an intelligence requirement is just a question. Specifically, tends to be about the future. If we do have a grid down event, how many hours until we start seeing property crime or looting or violence in the streets? I live in between Houston and Dallas, roughly, and so every time a hurricane hits Houston, we get half of Houston spills out into our area. And so, if there's a Category 5 hurricane, how many evacuees am I going to have in my neighborhood? And one thing we've observed and confirmed through local law enforcement is every time we have a mass evacuees out of Houston, our property crime spikes. So that's something that's predictive or actionable that we can use. So specifically what we're talking about here also is intelligence gaps. An intelligence gap is a piece of information that we don't know, but we need to know. So just anybody, what is an intelligence gap for you for your local area? What is a piece of information that you would like to know, but you don't know? Anybody? Okay, who are my neighbors? That's a good one. That's a very good one. Yeah, so who's on the sex offender registry list in my area? What's another one? Yeah, what gangs? Yeah, what gangs and cartels are active in the area? What else? Yes. Yeah, how many illegals are in your county? My county, on a good day, is between 20 and 30% Spanish speakers at home. So I know that. So what am I trying to do? Trying to gain fluency in Spanish, in the old Espanol. And I say on a good day because that's just the official number. I actually don't know what it is. But being in Texas, we have a lot more Spanish speakers than we used to. What else? Yeah, homelessness. Yeah, not just maybe the homeless rate, but yeah, where do the homeless people hang out? By the way, you want to talk about good intelligence sources, homeless people, because they're out there on the street. They see what actual life is like. They know the drug dealers. They know who belongs in that area and who's new and who isn't. You got to be careful with those people because well, for obvious reasons. But otherwise, yeah, just chatting them up. When I used to live in Charlottesville, and there was an ice storm, we were late for work, and so there used to be homeless people that kind of lined the streets of, like, right down the street of where I lived. And so I went to a hot dog vendor. I'm like, hey man, just give me 20 hot dogs. How much? He said $20. It was a long time ago. And so I went and found one of those homeless guys, because there was a homeless shelter nearby. And I took him to a little restaurant, and I gave him the hot dogs, and I just said, hey man, what's life like for you? You know, what do you see out there? And we talked. He actually went to prison for murder. And after he said that, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be talking to this guy. But that's just an example of, making an acquaintance, talking, asking questions. That guy was super happy to talk to me. And so, we got to get out there and be personable and talk to people, develop these relationships, and then have them provide the information that we need. All right. So we have all these intel gaps. So how many illegals are in our area? Who in my county might know that information? County sheriff. Yeah, I could potentially call up the sheriff's office and ask that question. How about homeless people in the city? Who could give me information about homeless people in the city? Local law enforcement. They run into those people all the time, especially the mental health people. Yeah, homeless shelters or charity or church groups that provide services to the homeless. Absolutely, they would be able to provide us information. All right, so we look at what our intelligence gaps are, what our collection requirements are, what's a piece of information I need to go out and collect. I just think about that and say, who do I know who can answer this question, generally or specifically? And then once I found someone who can satisfy that requirement, if I don't know them personally, what do I start doing? I start asking my friends, hey, who's in your network? Do you know anybody at the sheriff's office? Do you know anybody who's an EMT or a paramedic? And I just ask all the nodes in my network until I go out to the second node and the third node and the fourth node. And this is like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Eventually, I'm going to run into somebody who knows the person that I want to talk to. And so, again, this is the value of having this recruiting pool of a preparedness network, bringing people in, getting them onto our program of emergency preparedness and community security, and then acting on that stuff. I think I'm on till noon, so we have 15 minutes. I can continue talking about human intelligence, but I want to open up for any questions. As general or specific as you like. If there are no questions, I'll keep talking. Yes. Yeah, the question is, how do you start a conversation with others? Because there are some things we might say and the people gloss over. Trust me, I'm over there telling people about area studies and they're just like, zone out. All right. So ultimately, people act in their self-interest. And really what we're talking about here is source motivation. What are the motivators of individuals, or how can I motivate someone to provide me information? And there's a really cool acronym. If you want to write it down, you can. It's MICE, M-I-C-E-R-C. MICE RC, motivating factors of humans. So number one is, traditionally it's money. We use material. There's somebody, a homesteader in my area, and he needs a hand. Can we do a work party after our preparedness meeting? We've done this many times before. We're going to help Mikey butcher chickens. We're going to go and clean up brush for this guy. And that homesteader, all of a sudden, he's like, oh, these people are really nice folks. And then they get involved. That guy or gal gets involved in our network. And now I've got another point of contact. I got another sensor out there. In the Army, we said every soldier is a sensor. In our community, every member of our community is a sensor. If I'm not trying to link those sensors up with me, I'm failing in my job. And I think this is probably one of the more overlooked aspects of preparedness as well. Organizing your sensors and getting them collecting and producing information for us. So MICE RC. The first is money or material. Next is ideology. This is probably going to be our strongest motivator. If I can prove to someone, if you cooperate with us, it's in your best interest to cooperate with me, they're way more likely to cooperate with me. And they cooperate with me because they know I'm trying to bring stability. We're trying to prepare for the future. We're trying to make sure our families and communities are safe. I want all that stuff. How can I help? And so ideology, especially if they are politically aligned with us, then they're much more likely to provide me information and get involved in support. Next is C, This is illegal, so do not do this. But compromise, right? It's intelligent, or espionage specifically is a very dirty business. And, there's laws you can break that we can't. But getting people in compromising situations, whether that's stealing money or doing something illegal or an affair, right? Everyone's familiar with the honey pot, or the honey trap, rather. And so we get people in a compromising situation, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey, it really would be bad if Kathy and the kids found out about what you're doing yesterday, right? Kathy doesn't have to find out. Here's what I'd like you to do. Work with me. We'll sweep this under the rug, right? So that's an example of compromise. It's illegal. Don't do that. Next is ego. Well, if you do it, don't say you learned it from me. Next is ego, and people talk and people will do things because they want to bolster their ego. So we can use what's called an ego up approach, and say, man, wow, you really know a lot about gangs. Or, did anyone see this last Air Force kid who got arrested for giving classified information to his Ukrainian girlfriend? Right, and it's really like, some Russian GRU dude or whatever. And so in the affidavit, they published the chat logs of him talking to his girlfriend. He's like, oh, you're so smart. Like, oh, you're my little spy, providing me information. Oh my gosh, I love you so much. You tell me stuff before it comes out on the news. And it's just like, man, some 19-year-old Air Force kid with the top secret clearance just responding to that. Why? Because it's ego. Like, he wants to do this because he is in love with this dude, and he doesn't know it's a dude. Next is revenge. People will do things to go out and get revenge against the people they hate. So that's another way to motivate a source. And then finally, the last C is compromise, coercion, which is also illegal. All right. It's the credible threat of force. It's threatening someone. Do this or else. Do this or, we're going to go get your family or whatever. Cartels and stuff do this all the time, right? The whole plata o plomo thing, silver or lead. We'll pay a police officer off. We'll give you money to work with us, or we'll just kill you. All right. So coercion. So those are I don't know how many other motivating factors there are. So the question is, how can we motivate someone to provide us information or to work with us? Well, we just appeal to their self-interest. We appeal to their psychological needs. What do they want from me? How can I help this person? What do they want out of this relationship? If I can give them that benefit, they're far more likely to work with me. So the question is, when we go and talk to these people, what is in their self-interest? How can I get that person to act in his or her self-interest, which is also aligned with my self-interest? So come to my booth and we can talk a little more tactically about conversation mapping and prompting and other things we can do when we're talking to people. Any other questions? It's a question for her. Any other questions about area studies, intelligence? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. If you have a question, please say it into the mic. Thank you very much. Okay, gotcha.
So do you have a process you go through from like a trust and vetting standpoint? So when you're talking to a large group of people that you don't really know, but you want them in your circle, you have a process you go through to kind of make sure you don't have the wrong people in that circle that can compromise what you're trying to do?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest and most popular thing is to do a background check, or invite them to a shooting course, invite them hog hunting. Come out and go hog hunting with us, because it's a popular thing to do where I live in Central Texas. And you have to have a concealed carry permit. In Texas, it's called a CHL. So if someone can produce a concealed handgun license, I know they've already gone through the background check. All right. So I don't have to necessarily worry about that. So that's one way, just as an initial step, to vet someone. We can go back and do that kind of full scope background check, and whatever information we get. There's, I don't know, only about 100 companies online that do that. Like I said, the initial meeting, the meetings that we hold on Saturday, that's an initial way for us to talk to that person. And when they come, are they just automatically in my mutual assistance group? Of course not. And so what I'd like to do is talk with people over time, or hand them off to someone who lives in their area or someone who works in the same industry, and build a relationship with that person. And then over the course of weeks or months, come back and say, hey, I've been hanging out with this guy. He's super cool. We've had lunch. We went out for beers. And, and that's one way. The other thing too is everybody wants to show up to go hog hunting. No one wants to go show up to do a work party. So, and everyone wants to come out and shoot hogs. Very few of those people want to stay and clean up afterwards because we don't leave the hogs out there, right? Because we'll bring coyotes and coyotes will kill the calves. All right. So we got to go clean up our mess. The dudes who stay out there with us and clean up the mess are guys I know I can count on. So think about other opportunities, the gut check thing. Hey, we're going to go camping or backpacking, and we're going to pack, 5 miles in or 2 miles in or whatever to this lake, and we're going to camp. And the person that's 500 feet in and already complaining, probably not a dude I want on my team. So I hope that answers your question. We can talk more about the counterintelligence aspect of vetting, but more than what we have time to talk about here. So come visit me at my booth, and we'll talk more about specifics. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes, sir. Roll Tide, by the way.
Roll Tide. So do you feel like there's a certain group size that things can, maybe people separate into different groups from there? How does the community coalesce? Does there have to be one champion that keeps everything organized? Is it kind of loose, like everybody kind of separates off into their different skill sets?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the question.
Great. Yeah. So great question. Yes, there is the law of diminishing returns. Your group can only be so big before you start to lose, any kind of control. I don't mean that in like an authoritarian way. I mean, having positive control over this group. And so that preparedness network is just our first contact point. From there, people can join a mutual aid group if they live in the same neighborhood or the same part of the county or same part of the area. And, and then we do have, other groups. So yes, one thing that is absolutely critical for running any kind of network is leadership. So I'm kind of the reluctant leader of the preparedness network. I haven't been able to find anyone to hand that off to. And so if I'm working 80 hours a week in my company, guess where I'm not working? In the preparedness network. So ideally you find a retiree who had an engineer or someone who's organized and capable of leadership. Guys, it's one Saturday a month. It's not a ton of work, but you do have to stay on top of it. And so, yes, in addition to a leader, we also have a steering committee, which helps us make decisions. It helps us figure out our training schedule. So what are we talking about for our May meeting and our June meeting in July? And, we're really kind of organized based off the Army staff system. So S1 is admin. So personnel, how do we contact the network? Who runs our email list? Who gets in contact with all our network members? S2 is me, obviously. S2 is intel. S3 is training and operations. So we have an Army infantry guy as our S3. S4 is logistics. So we have our diesel mechanic, like all around, he could probably fix a Saturn V rocket ship. And he's our supply and logistics guy because he knows where to get the parts for anything and everything. And then we have S6, which is commo. So we actually have to have 2 commo people. And they run our emergency communications network. And they also run our two-way system. So those are my recommendations as to how to lead a network and how you organize leadership so that you can continue to push momentum forward and keep growing. Any other questions? Well, if you think of some more questions, head up to the mic. All right, let's talk about the source recruitment cycle just very briefly. We're really going to focus on the front half of the source recruitment cycle, which is spotting and assessing. So a little while ago, I was talking about collection requirements. The pieces of information that we need to go out and collect. Where do the homeless people hang out? And what are the homeless people doing? And are they pushing drugs into the community? Or is MS-13 in the county? What are they doing? Latin Kings, what are they up to? All right, so we have all these pieces of information that we want to know about. And so in the spotting and assessing phases, or typically one phase, I'm looking for people in my community who can either provide me access to that information or provide that information specifically, or who has a skill set that I would really like to have in my group. We have a former, he was in the Marine Corps. He's a radio systems maintainer. So he fixed radios. Is that a guy I want in my group? He can fix ham radios. Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So we are always trying to spot people in the community who may be aligned with our goals or have skills or knowledge that I want access to. And then assessing. Once we spot or identify that person, now we need to assess what are their values? What are their political beliefs? What's their culture? Are they culturally a good fit with us? Is this someone that we actually want from a personality level? Is this someone I actually want in my network? So spotting, assessing, developing. Once we spot somebody, we assess them. Yeah, actually, I really want to know this guy, or I want to get to know this guy. We start to develop a relationship with these people. And if he plays golf down at Shady Acres Golf Club, I don't know. I either find someone who plays golf in my network or I learn how to play golf. And I show up there and I bump into him. Oh, hey, what's up, John? You know, I met this guy maybe a couple weeks ago. Or I look for someone who knows John and I ask for an introduction. Because what does that immediately do for me? It gives me some level of credibility. Oh, well, if Tom is friends with this guy, he's probably an okay guy. So I develop relationships, or I get someone in our network to develop a relationship with this individual, and then comes the recruitment phase. So spotting, assessing, developing, recruiting. And recruitment is the hard pitch. Hey, here's what we're about. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's how we would like you to help, and here's how you can benefit. Just in the unclassified version in a nutshell. All right, any other questions?
We have a question from the digital passes. Letty wants to know if there's a way to assess how many immigrants are coming into a region.
I would go to the county sheriff or potentially your county's emergency management agency. If you have one of those, those are two places where I would start. Or if you have a relationship or know someone who at the local, county newspaper or your regional newspaper, I would just get a journalist under that. That's a journalist's job. Answer those questions. So again, the benefit of knowing lots of people from different walks of life is, and having relationships with them is I can task this person to go out and gather this information. I hope that helps answer your question.
Looks like it.
Okay. All right. So just kind of in closing here in the last few minutes, identify your intelligence gaps and write them down. This is something that in every chapter we talk about intelligence gaps in the Area Intelligence Handbook. I do have these for sale over at my booth, which is on the right-hand side, right down here. And come talk to me about area studies. We can also do an area study. The second layer of our operational environment is the human terrain. So when I'm assessing my local human terrain, it's not just demographics like age and sex and race. It's political beliefs and attitudes and behaviors and cultures. And so also, let me say this. It's not just individuals that I'm trying to work with. It's also groups and subgroups of people. And so identify your intelligence gaps and then think about the people you know, or go one more note out. Think about the people you know who know somebody who can help satisfy those intelligence gaps. And if you can do that, you are practicing human intelligence. And it's a very practical thing to do because the more information I know about my area, the more I can anticipate future events, the less uncertainty I have about the future. And when we can identify those threats, hazards, and vulnerabilities and their second and third order effects, I know exactly what to prepare for. And human intelligence, or HUMINT, is one aspect of that. Any other questions? Then I think my time is about up.
Yeah, I was going to say, we could maybe sneak one more in if you wanted. If anybody's got a quick question, we can. If not, we're going to kick Mike right off the stage.
Guys, I teach 3 and 5 day classes on this stuff, so we can keep talking too if you want.
All right. Well, we tried.
Where do they get your classes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so our classes, we teach them all across the country. You can go to grayzonestore.com, and that's where all our books are. And we're intelligence and special operations veterans teaching intelligence and security skills. And Gray Zone Store, that's gray with an A.com. You can also see our course schedule. We have, my next course is coming up in the first, it's May 4th, somewhere around there, in Harmony, North Carolina. It's a one-day area study workshop. If you want to come out, learn how to build your area study, go through it with me step by step. I'll show you exactly what to do. And you can find out more at grayzonestore.com, gray with an A.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all very much.
If you want to, she wants to do a, that's all right. We'll go over here. Thank you, Mike. And we're going to be at the same event in Harmony, actually. So I will see you there again. So, all right. So Nicole and I, we're gonna come up on stage here in a minute. But opportunity tickets. I know I already told you that we had it rigged last time, but they made sure I couldn't buy any tickets at all this time, so we couldn't win anything. So Nicole and I settled on the price. So it's one ticket for $10, 3 for $25, and 20 tickets for $100. So if you look down here at some of the cool giveaways, that's just a sampling of what you're going to get.
Let's talk about what some of these are.
Yeah, please do.
Do you see this pile of loot right here? It's actually a visual aid because this is a $250 gift certificate for what you choose in the factory.
Yes,
So
sir.
rather than telling you you have to get this day pack, it's that. We've got some water straws, some live straws. We've got a handmade. This one's really cool.
What do we got, Nicole? Careful.
This is a bottle opener made by Nomi Works out of wood,
Nice.
which is pretty cool. They make end cut cutting boards.
You know what I thought that was?
What?
I really thought that was one of those things for a Ouija board. I'm like, what's that doing up here?
Now, I'm not sure who let this one pass, but somebody else roasted coffee and they donated it. So Sonny's got some coffee and some cookies. And then I got a coffee of the month. He just broke the cardinal rule.
Who can tell I don't sing for a living?
Hold up one of those freeze-dried things. Who knows Homemade Wanderlust, Dixie Mills? Anybody heard of her?
Yes.
This is actual freeze-dried food she's carried on the trail with her and not used.
Yeah. Dixie's
and then
awesome.
she traded it to me on a barter blanket.
What else?
So that's like a 3-pack of freeze-dried meals. Oh, hold up the hat.
Sure.
Already did that one. Last time we had a spinning demonstration, and this hat was made from the yarn that was spun at Self-Reliance Festival in October.
That's cool.
Mama Sauce knitted that. That's a pretty cool hat.
What else you looking for?
Yeah. So there is a copy. EMP Shield has donated 2. World Without Rule of Law, which is a fun little. We'll do some of these later today. It's a card game you can play.
Those are awesome. We've there's I think Grumpy Acres does live streams with them.
I think Rare Plant Store donated a set of fodder trees or something. I need to find out specifically
Check for
what
Nick.
that was.
Yep.
Anyway, opportunity tickets are $10 each, 3 for $25, and then we're doing 20 tickets for $100. You may wonder where the money goes.
That is true.
It is a fundraiser for Dark Horse Lodge, which is a veterans retreat here locally for combat veterans to find a place to start healing from their PTSD. And it was founded by Gretchen Catherwood, whose son was killed overseas. And what she realized as she was getting to know some of the people who had served with him was that they'd come back fairly broken. And we were losing veterans at an alarming rate to suicide, to mental issues. And so she embarked on an impossible task of raising, $1.5 million to build cabins out on a piece of land with a central area where caretakers could stay separately from the veterans, because what they found out is when combat veterans spend time together, they will share stories and start processing some of the things. But what they won't do is tell those stories to people who don't know, who haven't been there, because they don't want to put their trauma on somebody else. So that's what we are raising money for, in case you were wondering, for the opportunity tickets.
We'll be coming over after with the little bin like we did before, asking for money. And
Well, we have tickets here. So
Okay.
if you'd like to buy tickets,
come up and see me, and we can. Yep,
you can give tactical money.
right there. Yep, tactical. So
Seriously, come here.
10. So $10 a
Tactical
ticket.
is a combat vet. He will gladly take money. He's the one who connected me with the lodge. He and Kurt Duggar. So he will take money, and then you keep one ticket and you put the other one in at the information booth. There's a little basket thingy.
It ends up being pretty good. So we're gonna talk a little bit about where everybody's from. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the most popular things we do, which is funny because nobody's here. Well, you guys are nobody. Fewer people are here than usual for this. Is we'd like to find out who's here who doesn't think there's anybody near them who they can start to connect with, or who wonders how they can connect. Okay, where are you from?
Come right up.
Where?
Indianapolis.
Is anybody in the area from Indiana, Indianapolis, anywhere like that? Raise your hands. Nobody?
within a little
You're
drive.
right. You're alone.
Ah,
Yeah.
20
20.
tickets for $100.
20 tickets for $100.
So there's actually a couple who's been down to this event a couple of times that I head up to. They're in Illinois, but they're not very far from Indy. I think maybe 3 hours away.
Chicks Homestead?
Two Chicks
Two Chicks
Homestead.
Homestead.
Yep. Nate and Aaron. Do you know Nate and Aaron?
Chicks. Sorry about that, Aaron.
Yeah. So they're not far from you at all. We're having another get together there in like 5 weeks. So if you're interested, tickets are $1 simply so that we can hold it. But yes, so there's one connection right there.
Yes. We usually have a vendor here who's selling cinnamon rolls, who is from Indiana.
That's right.
But it's
yeah.
a few hours away. There are a number of people. Yeah. Yeah. You are not alone in Indiana. Now, California, I'm not sure what I can do for you guys. No.
Where are they? They're going to be the butt of our joke. No, that's
Yeah.
not. But I can't say much because I come from Canada, guys. It's like worse. Yeah, it's like California, but with cold. It's miserable. So
Okay, who else wants to try to find people?
yeah, somebody.
I'm sorry, what?
Massachusetts.
Online, Northern, is it all one person? I will. Okay, anybody in the Massachusetts area? So New Hampshire will be here at the next event.
Oh, good.
Backwoods Butcher is from there. There is a big community that is developing in New Hampshire also, which is not far from Massachusetts.
It's all right there.
Yeah, it's all right there, especially if you're from Texas. It's all right there.
We're shooting at having to get together in that
So
area.
I would reach out to them. The Free State Project is a really good resource in that general area. Free State Project, just because not only do they track people in New Hampshire, but like they have a pretty good database. I would reach out to that in that area. That's what I would do.
We had a gentleman
We
right
had
there in the
somebody with
camel
their
hat.
hand up. Yeah.
Yep. Where are you from?
Missouri.
Now I've already talked to at least
Yeah, I know.
one
There's a bunch
person
of
from
people
there.
here from Missouri. Who's from Missouri? Anybody in the room right now?
I think they're sleeping wherever they
They're
are. I
sleeping.
don't-
They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah.
realize it was connection session.
That's
time.
okay.
What
I
happened?
didn't. No, it's good.
Have you ever heard of a neck knife producer called MT Knives? Yes. Do you know him? No, but I've heard. He's in Missouri.
He's not far from you.
Yeah, I would reach out there, and then we'll do this again at another time of day just to try to connect. Anybody else want to try? Yeah, Wisconsin. Letty, are you on the live stream?
Letty Lou. Yes.
Letty's on the live stream. Can I say your email out on the internet publicly?
Yep.
Letty at backwoodsconsulting.com. LETTIE at backwoodsconsulting.com.
And Nate and Aaron, even though they're in Illinois, are not that far from there either.
Yeah.
They're that whole kind of,
Wisconsin.
what do you call it, Wisconsin area where they have bagged milk.
Sam, where do you
I
live?
know, I heard.
Do you live in Arkansas or Missouri?
Where are we at?
When you're there, Nomad. Okay. Are you ever in Missouri?
Yeah, I go to Missouri.
Because we've got somebody here looking for Missouri.
I'm playing a bunch in Missouri.
Can you two like meet in like it's you two right there? Talk to each other like no. Yeah. Yeah. Well, she left, so she missed her opportunity. Anybody else want to give it a shot? All right, folks, our next session is at 1:00.
Yes.
And it's somebody you've never heard of who's going to talk about getting shit done with my 3 things, building resilience with my 3 things.
Yes.
And her name is Nicole Sauce.
She's pretty awesome. Awesome sauce,
So
you could
it's
say.
lunchtime. Grab some food. We'll see you back here at 1:00.
We do have some food vendors, right?
There, the food vendors got Taproot. I see. Is that
Grumpy
Taproot
Acres?
or Grumpy? Grumpy? What is it? Barbecue sandwich? Ooh.
And Chef
I know there's
Brett?
brisket.
Yep.
There is keto-friendly beef stew. There's some gumbo. There's all sorts of stuff over there.
And if you like gas station subs, you can go next door. So
Yeah. Also, he's got really unhealthy snacks
Oh,
from Canada
yeah.
at his booth.
yes, come and see my girls. If you're looking for dessert, they brought down all the Canadian treats. So there you go.
All right, guys. We'll see you at 1:00.
Thanks a lot.
No, so she goes in the hospital.